Wife cheating video leaked and she still was able to BS me. I'm 35 years old, and we lived for years in this Brazilian neighborhood, where I knew almost everyone. There was this guy, a personal trainer at the local gym. He had a reputation for picking up married women and was very proud to be known as a master homewrecker. My wife, 34F, was a regular at the same gym, and she was the married woman he was f***ing. I and the rest of the neighborhood found out about this when a video leaked. He was masturbating and coming on top of the wedding photo we had on our bedside table. He ended by turning the camera to him and laughing. Of course, it runs like fire through the neighbors. And everything got worse when the guy decided to record an apology video in which he admitted the affair and said our names. So if anyone wasn't sure who the couple was, he had just confirmed it. When people came to warn me, I could barely look at the video. At that moment, I thought and felt everything. I just didn't think she would lie about it. I felt anxious just thinking about having to leave the house and face the neighbors. I was terrified of imagining that my children could end up watching this video too. We moved to a new city as quickly as possible, and I cut off all contact with people there to try to hush up and forget the case. We did months of couple therapy. She admits everything and apologizes, but always maintains the narrative that she was also a victim. Her story is, she was trying to break up with him, and the guy recorded this video to expose her for revenge. She said that they never had sex in our bed, that she only let him into our house one time, and that he distracted her by asking for something and recording the video without her knowing. She told me multiple times that she would never have agreed to expose our love and our family in this way, that she was destroyed, that she let herself be carried away by her friends. Anyway, a bunch of BS that I think I actually never believed, but just let it go because I'm a fucking idiot. Now, I just found this video again on a site. For the first time, I took a deep breath and watched the whole thing. It's only a few seconds, but for the first time I realized that our photo was on top of her crotch and that she was laughing, loving, and encouraging him as he recorded it. That's it. She was lying and laughing behind my back the whole time. I discovered her betrayal in the worst and clearest way possible, and she still managed to fool me. How worthless am I? Story 2. She told me the day after I moved across the state about our relationship. I, 35F, met my ex, 30M, in school. We dated for 2 years, got engaged during COVID, and were planning our wedding. 3 weeks before our wedding last April, he called it off. He said he wasn't happy. He had begun to resent me for my shopping addiction and couldn't go through with it. I blamed myself for the relationship ending and was devastated. We only stopped talking for 3 days but kept texting and calling afterwards. We finally started seeing each other again on weekends. No formal title, guess the situation. One day, I drive over while he's at work since we have a flight to catch the next morning to see his daughter, 9F, and there's another woman's, 21F, stuff at his place. I was ready to leave him, and he begged me to stay. He told me that I was the one he wanted to be with. It wasn't serious with her. Later, he told me that he was planning to cut things off with me after our trips but fell back in love with me. He decided to end things with her instead. He ended things with her in October of last year. He told me he loved me again in December at Christmas. We were boyfriend/girlfriend again at the beginning of this year. We continued to travel long distances. I would drive to him, 2.5 hours away, on weekends. We'd talk every day. The plan had always been for me to move to him when a job came open. It did, and he encouraged me to apply for it. It takes a long time for these things to get finalized. I moved in at the end of May. He told me that he wasn't a good person the next day. He had started seeing her again in January and was now in love with her. I knew that they continued to talk because he didn't hide it. I told him that I wasn't comfortable with it but knew they had friends in common with old coworkers. I just said they couldn't spend time alone by themselves, but large work group outings were inevitable. I stayed for another month because he was figuring out what he wanted, and I had nowhere to go. Eventually, I had to leave. He told me that he couldn't stop talking to her at this point. He said it might be a mistake, but he has to make it. I left, and after a messy aftermath, we went without contact for 3 months. She moved in a few weeks later. He reached out first. He messaged me about his daughter, and a conversation started from there. He now tells me that he misses me and has considered getting back together. However, he's happy right now with her. We've seen each other a few times. I know he doesn't deserve to have any access to me after how he's treated me. I miss the future that I thought we were going to have. I got my hopes back up when we got back together and realized that this was our second chance. I'm cutting him out next Monday. He doesn't get to have his cake and eat it too. Story 3. My ex-husband's mistresses. I, 26F, met my now ex-husband, 32M, in June of 2018 and tried to not catch feelings because I was in my self-independence era, but, much to my dismay, I caught feelings pretty hard. So after a couple weeks of talking and mostly having intercourse, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I agreed. It was such a great relationship at the beginning. We hung out and communicated with each other, everything was going great. Honestly perfect. Before we even started dating, we both agreed that if we weren't happy with each other, we would tell that person and either try to resolve it or leave the relationship because we had both been cheated on in the past and we didn't want to hurt each other like that. So January of 2019 comes around, and I find out I'm pregnant. We are both excited and got married next month on February 12th. Unfortunately, this is where the story takes a turn. I end up quitting my job due to my pregnancy, but then he quits his a week later. He somehow started getting sick when he got a new job at a really great construction company. Which unfortunately led him to lose his job because, when you don't show up for 3 months, that's usually what happens. So I ask him if he wants me to get a job or a part-time job, for months pregnant at the time, and he says no. Of course not. He wants to take care of me, so I also agree and stay home, constantly worried about money and where we are going to live. Somehow things work out, and we end up getting an apartment, and at the end of August, our baby girl is here. So we move in. I had to get a C-section for delivery, so I was told to be on bed rest and only take care of me and the baby. Obviously, I felt guilty making him do everything else, so I would clean whenever I felt okay. He never cleaned unless told to, and it was very hard to get him to shower. Unfortunately, I got an infection in my cut from being too active, and had to be on bed rest even longer. Apparently none of this was good enough for him because in November of that same year, I caught messages between him and a girl on this Discord server called Task Me. 18 plus. Nudes, videos, all the cheating works. The thing that hurt the most was finding out that this woman is also married and has a little boy. And they felt so inclined toward one another that they agreed that they wished they could take their kids and run away together. And to answer any questions, no, I had no idea about this server beforehand. He's an adult, he can put 2 and 2 together to realize that it was wrong. So I immediately called him home and asked his mother to come by to help me with our daughter because, at the time, I was only 3 months postpartum. So after I had the obvious mental breakdown before he got home, I calmly asked him about it. He admitted to it. As this was his first offense, I stayed against my better judgment. Obviously, trust issues were grounded, and I made him deactivate his account and delete Discord, causing him to ghost that girl. Things were rocky for a few months, especially with the pandemic getting worse. He asked for my help with getting a job, and as much as I tried, I was still too mentally overwhelmed with his unloyalty and my postpartum depression. I couldn't keep a job for long. And with me mostly taking care of our daughter's needs 24/7, sleep deprivation was an understatement. So around September of 2020, we got a notice saying we were being kicked out of our apartment. My ex blamed me. He moved in with one of his friends in a trailer park, and I moved in with my parents. We were fighting a lot with the separation, and at one point he threatened to take away our daughter and divorce me multiple times and said I needed to prove myself to him. I found out that he was talking to multiple women on Discord, buying liquor, cigarettes, and some girls' OnlyFans, all while I was working and taking care of our daughter, because at that point he was completely homeless and living in his truck. I got my job back at a pizza restaurant, and I started getting better. He lost his place to live with his friend and moved back closer to Huntsville, but was homeless and living in his truck. All of a sudden, he was apologetic, wanting to work on us and get back together. I, like a fool, fell for it. But I told him that I refused to be treated like he treated me and that I want access to his phone whenever I wanted. And he agreed. I ended up getting a studio apartment in January 2021 at my friend's house. After a few weeks, they allowed him to stay with me too, and from there, we started the process of working on us again. It seemed okay, of course we had our fights. But by the end of the year, around November, he got an offer from his friend to move to Oklahoma and get a job with him. So we agreed to get him there first, let him start working, and get money together for me and our daughter to eventually follow him there and live together. He left on November 29th at night. I arrived on December 2nd in the afternoon. The last message I received from him was on Thursday, December 7th. He then proceeded to ghost me and our daughter for 7 months. Absolutely no contact. I called the Oklahoma police, the hospital, and the jail. I joined an Oklahoma community group on Facebook to try and find him. I was worried and sick. It finally took me calling the police station and filing a missing person report to find out that he's perfectly fine. He has been at his friend's trailer this whole time. And of course, he hasn't been working or doing anything that he promised us. April of 2022, I finally bought a trailer all by myself. And had a place for me and my daughter. My ex-husband comes back around the middle of May, and I buy him a ticket home. At this point, it was unambiguously mentioned that we were separated. I had gone to a lawyer in the month of March, and since it was so expensive, I had to postpone the divorce. So the evening we get home, after I pick him up from the bus station, I get a message from his friend back in Oklahoma City saying that he apparently got into a relationship with a girl in a different country, and he has been having intercourse with one of his friend's friend on the side all while being there. I ask him about it, and he gets defensive about it, saying that they're just trying to stir up drama. I tell him that we are separated, so if there's anything he needs to tell me, do it. He then admits to both accusations. So he starts living with me, and we end up sleeping together a couple times. He keeps saying that he is going to tell his girlfriend, but always comes up with some excuse. I start feeling guilty, so I tell her. Obviously, this breaks out in a fight. He wakes me up at 4 a.m. and makes me stay awake while he yells at me full force with our daughter asleep in the other room. He starts threatening to beat me, threatening to take our daughter, and verbally abusing me. He took my phone from me and threatened to hit me if I tried taking it back. Eventually, after 3 hours of this, I had enough and went back to bed. So he moves out and moves in with an old friend of ours. We don't talk for a little while unless it's concerning our daughter. At some point, he got tired of the drama in that place and eventually moved back in with me. He told me that he and the girl he had dated overseas weren't together but were talking, so he considered himself single. As you could guess, we ended up sleeping together again. Only this time he was the one initiating it and saying I have to keep it our little secret. So after weeks of gaslighting and feeling like I was going crazy, I admitted myself to the mental hospital. He wasn't getting a job, and the emotional abuse was so bad that I felt like it was the best thing for me and my daughter. I lashed out at him, saying that he was leading me on but yet manipulating me at the same time, and I made him call the other girl and tell her everything. Being the obvious pathological liar he is, he didn't tell her everything. So while I was in the hospital, me and her got to talking. And it turns out he lied about everything, all the way down to the finest detail. When I got out of the hospital, I did feel better, and things were slowly getting better. I unfortunately had to sell my trailer, and at the time we learned that his grandfather was passing, so we took an emergency trip with his family to go see his grandfather for a week. While we were there, things seemed normal and acting like they were great. I thought finally he had realized that things could be great if we just stayed honest and upfront with each other. He said he would start day labor when we got back home, and I agreed that I would DoorDash when we got back too until we could figure out a place to live. When we got back, we used some money to get a hotel room for 2 weeks. I DoorDashed a couple times, but he stayed at the hotel, not signing up for day labor like he agreed. I tried to dismiss it, but with both of us splurging our tax income money, it came to light that we didn't have enough to stay another week at the hotel. So I called my friend, whom I had rented the studio from a while ago, and asked if we could stay there for a night. They agreed that we could stay for a month. So I restarted my OnlyFans and started looking for government housing and jobs. I made sure to be open and honest with him about every OnlyFans interaction because that's what we agreed on. My friend let me know that they were going out of town for a few days and we would need to get a different place to stay while they're away. I said it was fine, and we would figure something out. So a few days before they were leaving, she and her husband had a big argument. I left with our daughter and took her to my parents' house because the husband was throwing things and yelling. It was scaring my daughter. I texted my friend and asked if she wanted me to come back and talk. She said yes, saying that she did need a friend. So I came back and let her vent to me about her husband and what was going on. We got into the subject of divorce and its different types, and her husband called and heard her whispering to me and got upset about it. She sent me this: "I'm sorry for this, but we need you to leave as soon as you can, because my kid needs lunch and a diaper, and he does not feel comfortable enough in his own home to walk into the kitchen and get the baby what she needs when there is someone who can't mind their own relationship in our house, and the financial strain of feeding 2.5 more people is putting unnecessary stress on the relationship. I haven't gotten to fully talk with him yet. We just went to bed last night and I went to work today, but that's basically you or him." Of course, I was sad about that, but I understood because that's her husband, and sometimes we do things we either disagree with or don't like because of our significant other. Because we love them. So I went back to the house and got to packing all of our things, and my ex helped. Only he was acting weird. He barely packed any of his things and only put mine and our daughter's stuff in the van. When I asked him if he was ready to go, he said, "I'm going to ask if I can stay here since I'm allowed to come back when they get home." "What do you mean you're allowed back?" I asked. "Her husband said I could come back, but not you," he said. Yeah, you heard that right. So I get upset because, as far as I knew, everyone hated my ex for all the shit he has done to me and our kid over the years. So tell him that's absolute bullshit, and I leave with our kid to my parents. He chooses to stay. For context, we were trying to work on us during this time. So my parents made a comment that I didn't think about until later on. If he truly cared for me and our kid, he would have said, "No, I won't stay here if my wife and child can't stay here." But he didn't. He stayed. Didn't care to ask where we would go or if we would be okay. So not even 2 days after this, without even asking me or communicating with me, he got back on Discord and started flirting with different women again. So I immediately go over there and confront him. His dumbass started hiding his phone because, deep down, he knew. He knew. And this man gives no shit. Ethan Adam is a pathological liar, manipulator, and deadbeat dad who truly only cares for himself and no one else. He sucks the soul out of people and leaves them dry when they provide no other use to him. Just today, I tried asking him if he wanted to see our daughter, and he has ghosted me. Again, November 2022. Update. September 2023. It's officially been a year of him having no contact with me or his daughter. She asks for him constantly, and there's not much I can do. As far as I know, he now lives with his new girlfriend in an apartment complex in town. They seem to have money for cell phones, but not money for him to see his daughter. Or call. Or attend her birthday. How many more birthdays is he going to miss before he can realize what a grave mistake he's made by choosing to abandon his daughter? He doesn't respond to texts. He won't answer phone calls. He has blocked me on Discord. What does he want me to tell our child? TLDR, my former husband cheated on me multiple times, manipulated me into sleeping with him and paying for everything, and now has completely ghosted me and our daughter.